you. Thank you, thank you. Thank you. Woo. Wow. My goodness. There we are.
I think we have to start with some congratulations, because today, when the Academy Award nominations were announced, Killers of the Flower Moon received 10, including Best Picture, and Best Director, and I'm sorry, but I have to share this fact. This is the 10th nomination for you in that category, which makes you the director who received the most nominations, second to William Wyler, who had 12. So congratulations.
I don't know how that happened.
I think that the Academy, for once, is getting it right.
I don't know.
By the way, I'm going to ask for the lights to be raised slightly on the audience, because we see a black void right now, and I want us to be able to see faces a little bit. Yes, now you can get a sense of the scale of the place. So,
Jessica, where are you? They can't all be my daughter. I was just,
no.
oh, there she is. Oh my God.
Okay, we got her.
They're all waving. I don't know.
Okay, so speaking of the next generation, my film classes at Columbia University focus on close analysis. So I'm going to ask you not only about the vision of this film, but how you crafted so beautifully and what you wanted us perhaps to feel in terms of the stylistic as well as thematic elements. But I have to start with Lily Gladstone. I found her to be the marvelous discovery of your film. And today, with her nomination, she actually became the first Native American Oscar nominated for Best Lead Performance. I remember Howard Hawks once said about Lauren Bacall, "Now there's a face the camera loves." And one could say the same about Lily Gladstone. Can you tell us a little about how you found her for this film?
Well, it was really Ellen Lewis, who's my casting director. She, before COVID hit, I think, I've got it all a bit confused in terms of the timeline as to what happened, but because I had to do that other movie, Irishman.
That little movie.
And that got like really in the way. It was like we started with Killers, went to Irishman, came back, then COVID hit. But I recall, I think it was before COVID, that we were all concerned about we needed Molly. We needed a great presence for Molly. And Ellen told me, she'd been looking around and she says, she said it hesitantly and cautiously, I should say, I think we're going to be all right. When I heard that, all right, fine. And then she showed me, well, I looked at Kelly Reichardt's picture, Certain Women, and that last section with Lily, I thought she was amazing in it. And I said, this is definitely a possibility. I don't remember if we spoke before COVID or after, but I do know it was only on Zoom. So I think things were really shut down, you know. But then on the Zoom, I really felt that she had the heart for it, the intelligence, and the tenacity, but also the presence for it. The presence, and she would be there 150%, 200% in that picture. And I think we could, and what I sensed was that we could work together rather than saying, here's what you're going to do, let's go over here. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes you have a very tightly scripted scene. But with Lily, I felt that we could play with it the way I normally do with Leo and with Bob De Niro. And we sort of play around. Play around is the wrong phrase, but actually what we're doing is playing anyway. We're just older kids playing. So, but so I felt I had that leeway with her, and I felt she'd be open to that. I also felt that I could trust her in terms of her intent about her culture, Native American culture. And then finally, I don't remember it was before COVID or after, but Leo saying, well, we're going to have to find somebody. I said, let's do this meeting. And we had a Zoom call that took about an hour. And it was Ellen and Leo, me, and Lily. And as soon as the call was over, Leo buzzed, you know, how suddenly another phone rings and it's him. And he said, she's great. I said, perfect. This is where we're going.
And she gives this grounded but guarded performance, and with that Mona Lisa smile of hers.
Yeah.
It made me wonder, though, because you have worked many times with Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro, and here was a newcomer. Did you have much rehearsal to place them on a sort of even field?
No, I don't know if you call it rehearsal. It was constant. This particular film, Eric Roth and I started on the project before I started shooting Irishman, I believe. And we thought we'd start doing it, but I didn't know where to go with the book, David Grann's book. I liked it a lot, and I saw a lot of potential. And people kept saying, you're a Western. I said, not a Western. I said, I can't do a Western. The Western I admire too much. It's a genre, and that's no longer the genre that I grew up with. And so I can't go there. The Western is Hawks and Ford and Bedecker and Walsh and Fuller and all of them, Nick Ray. I said, that's a whole other thing. I said, there's something else here. And we were coming in through the David Grann point of view, which was through the Bureau of Investigation, which became the FBI, and going into a place and finding out who did what. But as we were working on the script, Eric and I, we started we explored every possible angle on, from the point of view of the Bureau of Investigation. And I found that basically the people that all this was happening to were not even reactive, they were acted upon. And I didn't know what to do with them, because I knew immediately when I saw the title of the book, and I knew it had to do with Native Americans. I've had some experience with it in the early 70s, and something that I never forgotten. And I knew that if I ever dared venture into that territory, so to speak, I had better be very careful and very respectful. And beyond respect, you would have to do that justice to who they are as best you can as an outsider. And so what eventually happened, and I think I've forgotten the question.
Basically, it was whether rehearsal was needed to place.
Okay. So what happened was that, you see, that's the point. That's where the thing about it is that as the script developed, we kept getting further and further and further into the Osage, and less with the Bureau of Investigation. And at one point, actually, I think it was right before COVID, we read a very long version of the script. I don't normally do this, where people get around, they read the script, but just wanted to hear it or see it as they spoke. And it lasted for quite a while. And after it was over, Leo and I, Eric, and a number of the people, we were, concerned, as they say, because it was very long, and also still didn't have quite the impact that I felt upon reading the book and knowing the story, getting to know the story through research and other things. And so a few days later, actually, Leo came up to me. There's another component to this story, which I'll get back to, but he came up to me and said, we had a meeting, and said, where's the heart of this picture? And I said, well, the heart is Molly and Ernest. He said, well, I think I should play Ernest. Because originally he was going to play Tom White. And I didn't, that was the other thing that was holding me back, because Tom White, who Jesse Plemons does an amazing job of it, but Tom White is almost like an archetype in a way. He's laconic, speaks very little. What he does has great charm and has impact. But when I work with Leo, it's different. There's more that comes out of him, and I mold and shape that with him. So what was happening was that around the same time, again, right before COVID hit, I went out to one of 2 trips to Oklahoma and spent time in the Osage County. There are 3 districts, Hominy, Gray Horse, and Pawhuska. And I was at Pawhuska with Chief Jeff Standing Bear and everybody, and was getting to know them in a way, or just beginning to get comfortable. I mean, I'm from Manhattan. I'm not... It's like, I got to get in there. I'm not an outdoorsman, although how much I love looking at it. But anyway, I got to get to know what's going on here, what their attitude would be. Is there trust there? Why should they trust us? You're white. What are you doing here? And so we got into a thing that way. We began to cautiously trust each other. And at the same time, there was a dinner given at the Gray Horse district, which is a whole other area of the Osage. And I was taken at the last minute, so we're just going to go say hello to these people. I didn't know what it was. And we're driving, and then there's this kind of a community center. And I got there, over 250 people. And they had a traditional Osage dinner, beef with gravy and meat pies and spoons, no knives and forks. And everybody was dressed beautifully. And over 250 people, it was myself and Rodrigo and a few others. But what happened was that they started to get up to speak on a mic. And they told about their uncles, their fathers, their grandfathers, their grandmothers, the aunts, the uncles, all this sort of thing, and who got killed where, how, and who did what. And I'm realizing this still exists. It's here now. These are the descendants. This is still alive. And a woman named Brandy Lemon got up and said, I know people were concerned because the kind of films you make are very violent usually. So, but I did see that film Silence. And I said, I think you have maybe, there's another aspect of him, or an aspect that could fit into the story in a different way. She was very interesting that way. I felt good about that. I began to see this is very interesting. The best was Margie Burkhart got up. She's the granddaughter of Ernest and Molly. And she pointed out, and this is what got me, she pointed out, you have to remember that Ernest and Molly were in love. Because we come in thinking, oh, these are the bad guys, they're doing things, and these people, they don't, and Ernest is a bad guy, and he's going to kill the whole family. They're in love. I said, what the hell is that? That's interesting. And we knew about Ernest's character. We read the transcripts of his travels. We knew the kind of person he was, and everybody talked about him because there were a couple of John Williams who's now dead. He was very close with Cowboy, who's, I believe, Margie's father was Cowboy, is the son, the little boy in the movie. And so that, along with reading a final draft of a script, not a final draft, but a very, very long draft of it, and Leo asking me, where's the heart? I realized the heart's got to be in the love story. How the hell do you have a love story where the guy is actually poisoning people? And maybe even poisoning his wife. And so we decided to take a chance and take the script and with Eric and everybody just take the inside out. And then go from the inside out rather than from the outside in. We had Paramount Pictures agreeing to do the film at that time. And so we did a quick draft trying to build up the love story and keep the FBI in there and keep it. And it wasn't right. Look, I've done pictures where, we start in a draft and then eventually working and works out. We get the film ultimately. And all I have to do is try to convince them that it's just the first couple of drafts. We're going to get there. Well, they didn't want to go there. Yeah. I totally understood it, too, because it's a different world now out there, and it's a lot of money involved. And they said, we like the other script. I said, yeah, but this is going to be better. I said, I haven't gotten it. Then I realized, what am I telling him? You got to trust me? They got a lot of money. Oh, my God. Okay. At that point, a couple of days go by, people are scurrying around. At that point, Apple came into it. It was very, very amazing that they did. And with the idea of theatrical distribution also, because I wanted to make a picture for screen. And Paramount came back in for distribution. So everybody worked it out. It was kind of nice. Leading to that, because of leading to answer that question, it really is the very heart of the way the picture is put together. And so rehearsals were a continuation of this exploration, but it never stopped. It was day by day. And rehearsals were meetings, talks. You know, Lily would go and meet with Chris, who was teaching her the Osage language, and she would come back and tell a story about the coyote and the whirlwind. And she goes, "That's what it's the trickster figure in folklore, and the trickster figure in Osage folklore." And she goes, "I see he's the coyote." And they started making different animals, and Bob's character was like the raccoon. And all of these things were feeding into our scenes. So we were doing, quite honestly, I was doing the rewriting until the very last day on set and on the weekends. Like, for example, the scene with De Niro and DiCaprio in jail at the end. We didn't know what would happen there. We honestly didn't. We kept thinking about it and working on it. Of course, there's the usual, they would attack each other in the jail and fight it out. And, you know, and I'm not doing that. I've seen it so many times. And it's beyond, I said, it's beyond fighting. It's beyond fighting, it's over. It's over. It's like the end of a marriage or something. It's like, that's it, there's no more arguing. There's no more discussion. You know, I'm warning you, you may warn me, but it's over. And that's what eventually we came down to, I think that about 3 or 4 days before shooting. But that took months to get that right. Molly and Leo started working together very closely, Lily. They were improvising to a certain extent. You see it in the dinner scene at the beginning. You see it in the car when she says something in Osage, and he goes, "I don't know what that was." He said, "But must be Indian for handsome devil." And she started laughing. That's real. So what you see right there is their relationship as people, as Leo and Lily, as Molly and Ernest. And that's what it was, even in the dinner scene, too. And so, you know, sometimes, like at that dinner, a man named Wilson Pipestem got up. He's a lawyer. And he was very much against it. And he, in effect, harangued us and harangued me in a constructive way, saying, "You don't get it. You don't understand any of this." And went on and on and on. And at one point, he was telling me a story about his grandmother. Again, this was later, after the dinner. He talked to me. He was a very interesting guy. He said, "You don't understand this." He said, "My grandmother, when I was a kid, you see, the Osage is very different." He said, "Different from what you know. We were in our house, and I'd be running around, and all of a sudden she'd say, 'Stop. Stop. There's a big storm. Wakanta has blessed us with the storm. Sit and receive Wakanta's blessing.'" And so I thought about this. That's the end of the scene of the dinner. The original ending was they both got kind of drunk, and I said, "No, it's better just she tells them to stop." You know, and he believes Wakanta. He believes it. In fact, Ernest, too, we found out was very much involved with the Osage language, so we started writing, we started translating a lot of the scenes into Osage. I mean, not me, but the Osage, because the language is being recreated right now. It had been, so much had been, how should I? Well, so much has been not talked about with the generations. They don't talk about it. And so all this was coming up. You know, we had other meetings with a number of the elders and that sort of thing. And a couple of them got up. They were very quiet at first, but then the chief said, "You got to talk." And one got up and said, "It's coming down on us like a locomotive, and we're going to have to deal with this." You know, and so it was really a matter of that respect, but respect not placing them in a hagiographic way, just dealing with rather them as victims. We didn't do that. We tried not to. So we got right into the middle of it with with the two hearts together, you know.
But in fact, one of the reasons that I appreciate this film so much is your opening sequence, which has nothing of DiCaprio or De Niro or even Lily Gladstone. You start in a way that reminded me of one of my favorite films of yours, which is Kundun from 1997. And here, I was very much aware that the style of this opening, it's not the staccato-like presentation that you often have of your rather violent male protagonists. You start, in fact, in a rather gutsy way by immersing us in a moment of ceremonial burial and death. In fact, we're going to run, it's very short, 1.5 minutes, the very opening of the film.
Oh,
as some of you know, yeah,
no.
We're going to run,
Okay.
we're going to run the first
Kundun.
1.5 minutes from Killers of the Flower Moon, but yes, there might be a little clip afterwards from Kundun, and we can actually see it right there. You don't have to turn around. If you could show, it's clip number 2, which is the opening sequence of the film.
That came after a long period of writing sessions in which I had these great openings. I thought we all had crazy ideas for openings of the picture. And one of which was the Oklahoma land rush. And Eric Roth had written a 6 or 7 page shot by moment of everybody. I was going to do it all in one shot. It was going to be maybe it was going to take like a month to shoot. And they all wanted to do it. I said, but then I realized that I pulled back or whatever, and you see the Native Americans looking at all those things rushing away just because the idea is you want that land, go take it. And you see everybody driving their car, you know, whatever, driving the carts with the horses, and they take it. And the natives are left. And the rapaciousness of it is what it was about. But the land rush took place in the 1870s. This is the 1890s, it's different. And I came across this in a book written by Redcorn, Charles Redcorn, I think, and we're trying to make a series of it now. It's called A Pipe for February, and this is his grandfather's recollection. And I also learned that the pipe is a person. It's not an object, and that person has power. And what they're doing here is because of the white world coming in and everything changing, is burying the pipe because the future generations will no longer be really Osage. They'll be taught by whites, etc. And they will no longer know how to use the power of the pipe. So the pipe will still have power, it's in the ground, but no one knows. It's too important to play with. It's a holy of holies, it's put away. That's the idea. And I said, that's the way it should begin. And then people were talking about, explaining about, they wanted me to explain everything about how they got the oil, where the thing, and this went on and on and on. I said, no, the more you explain, the worse it is. All you know is that you see them there, next thing you know, there's oil, things have changed, then suddenly all these people are there,
What's fascinating for me also, it's not just that you begin immersing us in the indigenous language and images and pace. You include a close-up of a boy's eye, sort of behind slats, and that reminded me that in Kundun, you also have this striking shot. Well, it's because I did an evening with Roger Deakins here a few months ago, and we showed clips from we showed clips from Kundun, and there's one. You know what? We're going to run that too because I just want everyone to understand some of the things that get me excited about Martin Scorsese's work. This is like 17 seconds, and it's the eye of a young boy who will become the 14th Dalai Lama. That's clip number 3, I think. So my question is, when you include something like that, which makes us so aware of the gaze, of how we are perceiving, do you want to call attention to not just what we see, but how we see? In other words, this mediation of the eye itself.
I think you're right. I think it's about how we're seeing. what is the mystery of sight,
Yeah.
of consciousness, is really what it's about, how we're perceiving this. Does it exist? I don't know. And so the eye for me is everything. It really is. The whole picture opens, remember, with the kid's eye opening?
Oh, yeah.
And then the eyes through the straw in Killers of the Flower Moon. I specifically took frames from Orson Welles' The Trial with the painter. Remember the painter and those kids looking through the slats? You know, I wanted that idea. But this is gentler, this is quieter, but I wanted that. So we took the eye of the boy that you see on the left is from another shot entirely, and we superimposed it on another boy's eye, so that the perspective is way off, but it's the eye.
Right.
It's how you perceive, how children too perceive the world.
Yeah.
You know, how they really perceive the world, and how we don't understand as we grow. I remember once my middle daughter, now she was my youngest at the time, she wanted the camera. She was about 6 years old, and we were in somebody's dinner, and she wanted the camera to take pictures of us. And it was back in the late 80s, I think. And when I got the pictures back, I said, "What is this? It's all low angle. The hell did this? This is crazy. That doesn't look what's happening. We look terrible." The kid that's her angle. The adults. You know, so the child's eye is very important. The child's eye in cinema. Sometimes a child goes to cinema at 5 years old. And a person was telling me this the other day, that cinema sometimes, or, you know, what you would call it, movies, whatever, is an overpowering primal kind of effect. It's sound, music, image, and it just envelops the mind of the child, the soul of the child, you know. There are those who are not as sensitive to it, they don't care, but others get that way, you know. They really do, and it's about the kid's eye all the time.
Jean Cocteau had a great line, a child's eye registers fast, later he develops the film.
Ah,
And I feel that in
Yeah.
what you're showing
yeah,
here.
yeah.
But it is also sound. You just invoked this. For me, the score of Robbie Robertson merits some discussion. In fact, I'd like to show a short clip that comes up just a few seconds later in the opening sequence, and then to ask you a little about the nature of your collaboration. So this would be clip number 4, I think, the oil dance, as they call it.
Yeah.
And I should mention that this film is dedicated to Robbie Robertson, who sadly passed away in August. Now you had collaborated, well, you first met, I guess, with The Last Waltz.
The Last Waltz, yeah.
Yeah, the farewell concert of the band. And that's the first collaboration.
Yeah.
And two things. I mean, despite the wondrous moment of music we just had, it seemed to me that this film has less music. It's not as scored, you know, beginning to end. There are moments of silence, more so than the other films that Robbie Robertson scored for you, like the Wolf of Wall Street. No, I'm sorry, The King of Comedy, and Casino, and The Irishman. Did you tell him that you wanted the sort of enhanced heartbeat sound throughout?
Well, I told him I wanted something, ultimately, after this kind of eruption of sound at this scene, that I wanted something fleshy and dangerous. And you begin to hear it when Leo's character has driven Molly home to her house. He's still the cabbie. And she gets out of the car, and he looks at her as she's going to the house. And she moves and looks back, and this strumming starts, boom, 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 boom. And that becomes like a pulse throughout the whole movie. He called it a pulse, too. And it's seductive, but it's also dangerous. And slowly through the picture, by using that a great deal, Thelma and I playing with that, and saying, let's get that piece again and put it in here. Because he never really he doesn't do cues, Robbie. He gives me stuff, and I want something this way, and he gives it to me. Then I work with Thelma, we put the cues in, and ideas. the music, you should see the scene description where I lay out a music scene for this scene, possibilities of disc number 2, cuts 4, 6, and 8. Disc number 3. So, and we could try each, and then everything is written out that way, like a map, in a way. And so, as we were pulling the picture together, and we felt wherever the music was needed, we'd go back to that sense of that inevitable sound that was just literally pushing the characters towards their fate. It wasn't guiding. It was really pushing him to the inevitable fate, like a bolero. It gets tighter and tighter and tighter, and that was something that we said, hey, Rob, give us more of that over here, but the guitar is too strong here, but could you take it down this way? That, like, for example, in the oil thing here, you hear the wolf sounds with the guitar. He did that, wow, and out there at night, we would hear the coyotes and the wolves out there all around, it was quite something.
And I'm assuming from what you say that he composed the score before you started shooting?
No.
Along the way?
We talked a lot.
We
would talk, man. The problem was he lived in L.A., I live in New York, so over the years we were very, very close, but in the past 10 years, I'd say I didn't go to L.A. as much, and he didn't come to New York as much. So when we did, we get together and talk about different sounds and different groups, like Phosphorescent I liked. It's a group I like a lot. Different pieces of music he may send me, listen to these people, that sort of thing. And there was always a project, always a project working on it, which was great. And so the meetings became very focused, more than our old days of being up for 20 hours straight. Hey, let's listen to this. Have you heard this one? Oh, wait, you have to hear the original. Oh, no, the original's amazing. When you go back and forth, next thing you know is 2 days later.
And I was very pleased today to see that Robbie Robertson got 2 Oscar nominations, and I gather he is of descent of First Nations.
But that's the thing. Part of my that first encounter with the Native Americans in 1974 in Pine Ridge was for a project that somebody wanted me to do. It didn't work out. It was a very, very difficult experience for me. It was traumatic. I didn't quite understand. I can't even, categorize what I experienced there. And so I became very, very fascinated by it, and also upset by it. And I was still making Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. And I was about to go into Taxi Driver. So I went off another way. But then I met Robbie, and I think his relationship with me, which was very close for quite a while, I got to know more about them. He's half Mohawk from the First Nations outside Toronto on the reservation. I just got to know more, and I lost granted, the first encounter was dangerous, but I lost the fear of the unknown, who they are, Yeah. And so I lost that, I think, and somehow his relationship with me and a few of the others that I met somehow found their way into the making of this picture in the past 40 years or so. A lot of rock and roll too is Native American. Link Ray, Rumble. If anybody remembers Link Ray, that alone, there are more, but they changed their names. They had to change their names. Some came out as fully Native American, I think in the late 60s, early 70s, but primarily in the late 50s and early 60s, the names were changed.
Right. Well, many of us were surprised that among best song, not just best score of Robbie Robertson, but the song, Wajanje?
Yeah.
I think I'm mispronouncing the Song to My People, which is also with Scott George from the Osage people. That got a nomination, and it was, wow, Robbie Robertson has 2.
Well, it's amazing because that ending of the film, I thought of as we were shooting about the drum, the pull back, and I had been to a number of what they call the Alanchka dances, which were fantastic. And I said, we want that kind of thing. But they said, we don't do the Alanchka music, though. And then he had to make sure that the music that was created with the other composer for that song was a special song written for the film that had the right elements that could coexist with Osage culture. And so it was very, very specific and particular. Because Rob did come down with Jared Levine as his manager. They came down to Oklahoma for about 3 days and met everybody. Did some recording down there. It was hot. We were shooting, and because of COVID, we had to shoot. Once we got the go-ahead, and because we already had lost the money and got it back, but they were ready to go. We're going to shoot. I don't care what the weather is. It was hot. It's a great place to shoot, but, like Taipei or places like that in the summer, it isn't wise. You just, the heat was so strong, a lot of the time, I must say, 105 to 110 degrees. And it was very hard to take. And Rob was there when it was really bad. And I walked over to him, I said, what do you think? I said, hot, huh? And he goes, yeah, puts hell to shame.
Great line.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah. So that's the way I got to know him, the way he spoke, and the sound of his voice was like music. And the way he thought, which is very different from me. This guy was on the road at 16 years old. I was still coughing up. My mother, with asthma, with bronchial asthma, constantly going to get, my allergy shots, 6 in each arm.
Okay. We're going to take the questions on index cards from the audience in just a moment, but I did want to show at least one more clip, thank you, because I'm just going to ask you what I tell my students. Basically, that the greatest films are the ones that are not only telling the story, but they're almost secondarily about cinematic storytelling. I mean, they create their own language so that it heightens the tale. Its style is not separate from the content. You have silent movie titles that introduce the oil-rich Osage, and the epilogue is this radio broadcast of how the tale was finally disseminated. It's a Lucky Strikes thing, and the recording is it's being performed in front of a live audience, and we get to see the orchestra and how the sound effects are created.
Yeah.
And I wanted to show a very short clip from that, and then ask you 2 questions about it. So this would be clip number 5.
Yeah.
At what point did you decide to put that coda in?
Well, pretty much early on, because if we were going to go through the FBI or the Bureau of Investigation point of view of the story, there was a film made called The FBI Story. And Tom White actually does do there's a section of it based on the Osage murders. Jimmy Stewart's in it. It's got a lot of great things in it. And it was produced as a Edgar J. Hoover's Masters of Deceit. Mervyn LeRoy directed. And it's basically the greatest hits of the FBI, ending with the really terrific sequence on John Dillinger. That's always very interesting, et cetera. Beautiful Technicolor. But they did have one on the Osage Indians, which was actually almost for comic relief. It was so insulting to the natives. But Tom White did show up in that because he was part of that. And I said, we have to reshoot that with Tom White in there. And then when we decided to go the other way, I recall that in David Grann's book, there were radio plays made of the Osage murders. And those were also part of the building up of the reputation of the FBI. Because this was apparently, as the subtitle of the book, is the birth of the FBI. Killers of the Flower Moon, the birth of the FBI. And so these radio plays, they exist. You could see, can't hear them, but you can read them. And they are pretty much like this. And I said, we have to do that. And I said, we can also then make a shift. And without making any indication, suddenly they're talking about the radio play takes place in 1933 or 35 maybe. It's in Technicolor, and it's in New York, but it takes place there. But then somehow they're talking about people in 1987. So it shifts to us, our time, who we are, being entertained by this, the way the radio audiences were entertained by the half-hour Lucky Strike shows on, Gangbusters or the Osage Indian murders, this sort of thing. And so I said to myself, well, I felt that after all this, it becomes a radio show for our amusement. After all this, I have to say, it becomes a film.
And
Maybe not for our amusement, but I try to make it as different. So then I realized that the only way to sum it up is I had to do it. I didn't know how to direct anybody doing the obituary. And I figured if I did it, I'd take a chance because it's a medium shot. Worst comes to worst, I have an actor, then I reshoot it, and at least I know what to tell him. But as I was doing it, my wife was there, my middle daughter, my granddaughter, some other friends, they were sitting there. I was doing it in the stage at my old Catholic high school, Cardinal Hayes in the Bronx, in the Grand Concourse. It was unbelievable. And I'm there, and then suddenly, as I kept repeating it, I felt it. And so we left it in.
One of the audience members asks about this and asks how much of that is putting yourself in it as a director and writer in a way. In other words, were you also aware that you were putting yourself
Yes,
in
very
it?
much so. Yeah. In other words, if you, at this point in time, if you have, for the Osage or for Native Americans, for Indigenous, for other people, I don't know, if you have issues with it, it's me. I did it. There's no sense in hiding behind the book, and I did it. I did the best of my ability, and I'm going to sign it this way. Because I felt I had to.
Okay, Isabella asks, how did you create...
Could I please have a question with you?
I'm sorry, but we're taking them only on index cards, so we'll just get one of the ushers to come by. I'm sorry, we can't. How did you create the scene of the fire? Was it real fire, water, gas? It is the coolest shot, right?
No, they're real fire. It's real fire. That was one of the key things. When I learned that he had burned those fields to get his money, I said, well, that's it. The flames, I always have a thing about Walpurgisnicht, the witch's Sabbath.
Martin, can I ask you one thing?
I'm very sorry, but the rules of tonight are that the questions are only on index cards, so...
Just give me a second. Yeah, let me get to where was I?
The house fire.
The idea of the burning of the fields. By the way, I experienced that one night driving. They were driving me back to where I was living, and we were on this sort of a moonscape with the fields on fire. It was the driver. We were all very quiet. At one point, the guy said, "I don't think I've ever seen anything like this." I said, "Me neither." It was kind of scary in a way, because you're put into another world, and I felt it was all these little figures dancing around the fire, very much, I guess, going back into Catholic iconography of the descent into hell and Giotto or whatever, and we basically shot that with controlled fire, with very long lenses, and with the flame bar at the bottom of the lens, and sometimes the flame bar would get a little, so we'd use the ripple effect. But as we saw the ripple effect going, I figured, let's go even tighter, and even tighter. And the image started to disintegrate in a way, in a beautiful way. And we just felt it that way. And I knew the piece of music that would go over it. I had that in mind already. So that's it doesn't relate to anything else aside from that idea of them all dancing around the destruction of our culture.
Well, one of the other questions was what movies influenced the style and look of this film. I want to mention that Jack Fisk, the production designer on Killers of the Flower Moon, was also the production designer on Terrence Malick's Days of Heaven.
Yes.
And I remember when I saw the scene in the film, he seems to be seeing a gorgeous distortion of the fire that made me actually think of Days of Heaven. I don't know whether that was something.
No, not actually. No. But you know, I was living in a house in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, is where Terry Malick was raised.
Oh.
And so he shoots in Pawhuska. He had told me about this before when I said, I'm interested in this. And I met him, and he said, well, I lived there, and we had this Al Jennings and all this sort of thing going on. And so I didn't see him while I was there. He wasn't living there then. But, you know, as soon as I got there, I said, oh, I see Terry's films. I could see what that landscape is and all that. Yeah.
Wow.
And Jack was recommended by him and by a number of other people that had worked with him. And I said, absolutely, you know.
And other films that have influenced this particular one, I have a couple in my head, but maybe you want to address that.
I think, as I said, for me, I can't say Westerns influenced it. There's the overriding image in my mind because I saw it the opening night by accident at the Roxy Theater of Giant, you know, but you can never go past. That's so extraordinary. I did get to work with Boris Levin, who designed it over the years. But for me, it was more, once we focus on the love story, it was more like the character Morris and Catherine in The Heiress.
Which I saw 2 nights ago again on TCM.
Yeah.
And while I was watching it, I have to tell you the truth, I'm looking at Olivia de Havilland's face.
Same face.
And I realized
Lily.
the straight dark hair parted
It's
in
Lily.
the middle, pulled back to reveal an unadorned face. And I felt it.
Yeah, that's what we did. I mean, it was there, just the way she was. And the argument all the time was, did he really love her? Did Morris love her? And I said, no, I think he wanted the money. But in those days, at that point in time, she could have made arrangement, et cetera. When he came back, did he love her? And I think Leo was arguing that he did. And I said, no, I think to the very end he didn't, you know? And that's why I'll never forget the closing of the door and him banging on the door.
I watched the last half hour, actually, because I suddenly realized it was on, and I went, ooh, I'll watch it a little again.
I think. I was 10 years old when I saw it. It was extraordinary.
Yeah.
You know, so that relationship always, that breaking of trust, the trust was really what it's about. Here, I don't think Ernest realized, I'm not defending him in any way, who knows? Of course, this is a creation. Who the real man was, we don't really know. But I don't think, because he also had a kind of, he really appreciated the Osage. And he didn't want, it's in the transcripts. He says, the police asked him, what do you do? He said, I don't work. Well, why not? So my wife is rich. Well, where do you hang out? He said, well, I hang out in the pool room. I mean, there's a guy in his 40s saying that. So it was very clear he didn't want any obligation or responsibility. He took care of the kids, apparently. And I don't think he ever conceived the fact that his Uncle Bill would take it that far. Yeah, the sisters, maybe they're going to die anyway. Anna was a problem. She was going to get in trouble. The others were sick anyway. The mother was sick, you know. But I don't think he ever thought it would come down to that. And you could see it in the scene where Bob actually forces him to sign that letter, whatever's in it. In fact, when we shot the scene, I didn't know whether Leo was going to sign it or not. And Bob convinced him. I said, he signed it. Look at that.
You know, I was reminded.
It was so great. I said, sure, sign the bastard. You know?
This is not the first time that they've worked together. You had a 2015 short called The Audition, in which they play rival actors who are auditioning for the same role.
That was very funny. That was very funny, yeah. Well, they told me, you just shoot it. You just shoot it. And then they said at one point, no, you act in it too. Then I had all the lines. They showed up, you know, they had a few lines, but meantime I had to do all the, anyway.
Yeah, got it. Someone asks, how do you approach composing a scene? Do you begin with the shot list, the blocking and performance cues, the music, or some combination?
For me, it's it's usually a sense of music. Now, I don't know, the music may have nothing to do with the picture, but it has something to do with movement. For example, when Leo is arrested, there's no music in that, but it's played like a dance. He gets up and the camera moves around him, and they encircle him, and we encircle them. And as the camera tracks around, the Bureau investigation guys come sliding in this way and in that way, and it's a circling and a wrapping around of him, like tying him up almost. And it's like a ballet. And that was we had that down. I said, it's going to be a circle. I don't know yet how to do it, but it's going to be a circular point, a circular move. He'll move, the agents will move, the camera will move, and we'll get him out the door somehow. And it was Adam Sumner who helped stage it. He's this great AD and co-producer of this thing. But music is really the key in most of the stuff. And also restraint in the movie. I didn't want to move the camera that much anymore because I wanted to see the place. I wanted to see the people.
I'm remembering, though, a shot that struck me. It was almost as if we were to transpose the Copacabana lyrically moving camera from Goodfellas to Osage. It's when we enter the mother's house. I mean, the house of Molly and Emma.
Yeah.
And the way that the camera was discovering the space in a circular way.
That's another thing I'm not quite sure works, because we wanted to show the contrast when, before she married Ernest, to after she married Ernest, sort of the contrast in the house. The first scene in the house, he walks in, the mother is there, she gets up, won't even talk to him. And then the two of them are having dinner, it's very quiet. Second time you're in the house, the place is overrun by all his brothers, kids, you don't even know who they are. Aunts and uncles, people are making comments about the kids, one looks more white than the other. I mean, it's wild. It's wild, but that's the way it became, and jazz is being played, which,
St. Louis.
St. Louis Blues.
Yes,
Yeah. And we found that. I found that in the old, I listen a lot to David Johansen. His show on the Loft called Mansion of Fun. He plays a lot of classical, old folk music based, but Harry Smith did from the anthology of folk music. So I'm collecting all that over the years and found a place for it, especially with that long violin string, that string moment. It just makes the camera go. But everybody does that now. You go to a room, you can do that with the camera. You can do it. It doesn't mean much anymore, except in this film, all it should mean is you get a sense of the place and the difference. As far as bravura camera work and ending on a narrative point, I'm not quite sure anymore, because shots are no longer the shots of the classical cinema. With the technology, it's a different language. Mm-hmm. You could stitch them together, you could do anything. Anybody could do anything. It's what you want to say with the shot. And so the best thing to do is pull back and start again when you make a movie.
I understand that, but I'm going to suggest that the rhythm of a film, sometimes if the camera does have a kind of lyrical fluidity, it makes me sort of lean forward in a metaphorical way. I'm moving through that space.
True.
I tend to love long takes.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, more than cha-cha-cha. What can I tell you? So that kind of a shot does feed my
True.
sense of...
I enjoy doing the shot, and we did it at the end of Hugo also.
Yes.
It ends. I just showed my daughter, she had seen it before, but Potemkin and Man with a Movie Camera. Oh. I do like that editing.
Well, they're perfect for the particular sensibilities of Eisenstein and Vertov. But, give me a Jean Renoir while I'm showing him in class in my class in 2 days. But I think you've mastered so much of cinematic language. You've helped to create the lexicon that filmmakers use today. One of my students emailed me today that, you're the master. He wanted to become a filmmaker because of you. And even though I have so many more questions, especially about collaborating with the cinematographer Rodrigo Prieto and Thelma Schoonmaker, your editor
here,
on 22. She's here?
Yeah, I think so. Where are you?
Thelma Schoonmaker is here. Could we bring up the lights? Bring up the lights.
Revealed. Oh, Ellen Lewis, too. They're hiding. There they are.
So I would love to continue this, but it'll have to be another time. I'm sure this
Hopefully
audience
not
would
30
come back.
years. Yeah.
Not 30 years, no. I just want to wish you all the best with the Academy
Oh,
Awards
thank
coming
you.
up, but also congratulations.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Oh, my.